This is Lindy.
I'm Russell.
From Love Create Celebrate. Welcome back to our channel where we share all of our DIY and home renovation videos.
Today we're going to be sharing on how we made our plywood desktop as well as our plywood floating shelves.
If you have not subscribed to our channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss out on future DIY and home renovation videos. This is a project we get asked about all the time. It's one of our most asked questions on the blog, and we never shared a video about how we actually did this plywood desktop for only $40, and we figured it was about time to share.
Yeah, and I mean, you might even get away with using scrap plywood because you just need thin little pieces to make it work.
So that's what we're gonna do for this video. We're gonna make a small table for our kids out of some scrap plywood, but it's the exact same process for this desk and these floating shelves. So if you're interested in how to make either of these for $40, stay tuned to the video. So we did have a bunch of scrap 3/4 inch plywood sheets, but you could also buy new 4x8 sheets for less than $50 to do any of these projects. We started by deciding how wide we wanted the table, and since it was a kids' table, we decided to do 37 inches and then cut off any excess from our scrap boards. Then we cut all of those boards down into strips, and for the table, we did 1 3/4 inch thick. And for reference, the shelves and the desktop that we did in our office space were all 2 inches thick.
Okay, so we have all our boards cut. You can kind of see here, we had to cut one board that was a little bit different color, but we wanted a little bit extra width, so we needed to use it. We just try to hide it inside all these pieces to make it kind of look random. The other thing we did is our planer can only do 13 inches wide, so I'm making 2 packs that I'm going to laminate together. Then we'll run them both through the planer to the same width, and then I'll glue those 2 pieces together and then just sand it smooth, just because that's the limitation of my planer. So this pack here is like 11.5 inches or 11 inches, and this one is like 11.5. It'll be a bit smaller once we clamp them together. Next step is to use a lot of glue.
So the easiest way to mass glue all of these boards was just to lie them all down flat, literally pour glue over top and spread it around. We have a little silicone glue kit that included this wide brush. They work really, really well. We use them on lots of projects. It was a gift in Russell's stocking once or for Father's Day, but anyways, super useful when you're doing stuff like this. Then he flipped all of the boards up in the same direction so that there would be glue on both sides of all of the boards. Next, we clamped them all together so that they could dry overnight, and the biggest thing here is getting it as level as possible, because when you're using the planer later and when you're joining the 2 pieces, it's just going to be much easier and faster if the pieces were nice and level now and there aren't any bows in the wood. And then we followed the same process with our second set of plywood pieces and let that sit overnight as well. When the glue was all set, we ran our boards through our planer to even them all out. Every time we ran one through and lowered the planer, we ran the other one through as well so that they would end up at the same width at the end. We probably did 3 or 4 passes on each side of each piece. If you're doing floating shelves or something that's less than the width of your planer, you don't have to do this next step, but the next step for us was to join these pieces together, and we first did a light sand to make sure there wasn't any excess dried glue on there, and then we added new glue and let it sit overnight again. And now it's time to cut the ends off to make sure that they are nice and even. We have our track saw for this, but the last time we built these we didn't have it, and we just used a 2x4 with a circular saw beside it, and it works exactly the same way. And then we sanded away any dry glue or imperfections that were on the top and bottom of our tabletop. Next, we had to putty all of the holes, so we made some custom wood filler.
We sanded the top just to kind of get it all leveled out. And then now I've opened up just the filter on the sander, and you can see there's lots stuck. So you pile all that up. And this was cleaned out before we started. So this is all wood coming from the material, so it will make the perfect patching color. So you take some glue, and it's not an exact ratio. You just want to see the consistency at the end. You want the glue in there to bind the sand, like all the sand or the dust together, and then also to put in the hole. So then you put a bit of water too to help kind of mix it in. And I'm doing it just on a piece of glass, just because that way, like if you do it on cardboard, the cardboard's gonna suck all the water or the moisture out, or you can use like a piece of plastic. So see, that's not wet enough yet. So I put a bit more glue and a little bit more water. Yeah, this is getting good. And so here too, because we're filling a whole bunch of small holes, I want it fairly wet because then it goes in nicely. So this is perfect. You just take some of your wood filler and then you can kind of spread it in the holes, and you can see it goes in there really nice.
Again, if you're doing a desktop or floating shelves, you can skip this next step, but we had to make legs because we are turning this into a kid's table, so we used some leftover wood dowels from our scrap wood pile. We decided to put them 2 inches from the edges, and then Russell used a spade bit in his drill to make the holes. One quick tip, if you're using a drill instead of a drill press or something, you can put tape on your drill bit to make sure that you don't go too far and you go the same depth in each spot. Russ cut the legs down to 18 inches and then glued them in place.
So when I initially set these in, so these only go in about probably 1/2 inch, maybe 5/8 of an inch, because I didn't want to get too close to the top. And when I had them in, you can still move them around. I mean, they're slender, they're long and slender legs. And I want, because this is a kid's table, I want it to be safe. So then Lindy actually came up with this idea where she's like, well, there's those brackets you can get at the hardware store. So I got these corner brackets, and I put 2 on each. And I mean, now that's pretty solid, whereas like these one, you can see they move way more. So this should make it really safe, and I think once we even flip the table, these won't be that noticeable. So this will make it nice and safe for the kiddos, and I think it gives it lots of structure, and it still gives the look that Lindy wants, so win-win-win.
After one final sand, Russ was ready to stain our new table. We decided to use the white linen stain on the table, and because of that, we also decided to use a conditioner on the wood before we stained it. The conditioner basically allows the stain to go on evenly and be absorbed evenly throughout the wood to get a nicer finish. And finally, we protected the table with a couple coats of polyacrylic. And here is how that kids' table turned out. We are so happy with it. The kids love it. And I actually love how the white linen stain turned out over all those plywood edges. I think it adds some really beautiful character to the whole piece. And here's how it looks as a desktop and as floating shelves. These ones are stained in dark walnut, and we put them on this wall a couple years ago as part of an IKEA hack where we used IKEA cabinets and built our own desktop to go on top of them.
So in this video, we actually showed just how to laminate the boards to either make a shelf or a countertop. We didn't actually show how we hung the hanging shelves. As we had some questions on that, we'll show you what we used. We got these brackets. We got these brackets off Amazon, and we'll include a link in the description below. But essentially how they work is these get mounted on the wall. You can space them so that they hit the studs in your wall like this. These are a little bit longer because we're gonna use these for a different project, but they get mounted like that so that they'd be centered with the center line or the middle of your shelf unit. You drill a hole into the shelf unit, and then you have a little routed guide on the back so that the pins actually sit flush with the shelf and the wall, and you have no gap. And then you have these, you mark it out on your shelf at whatever spacing you have your brackets. Essentially what we did for these is we drilled some holes in the back of the shelves. We routed the back of it so that these could sit flush inside the shelf, so that you had a seamless look when you had the shelves installed on the wall. So another question we get asked is how we had the cabinets underneath installed to the countertop. These are IKEA cabinets that we found in the as-is section, but there's still similar cabinets available from IKEA, which we'll link in the description. So what we did was add an MDF rectangle that was the same shape or size as the cabinet on the top and on the bottom. On the bottom was just so that the drawers could open and close, that they didn't hit the floor, and the same thing on the top. And it also gave us structure that we added screws then from that plate into the countertop, and those plates were screwed into the IKEA cabinet. So you can see like this is really sturdy, and that's how everything was secured. On the opposite side of this desk, it meets a wall, and what we did is I had that wall open because it wasn't finished inside, and I added some 2x4s, and I just screwed the 2x4s that were attached in the wall to the desktop to support the end of the desk.
And because we can't build a kids' table without showing our kids using it, here's a couple of clips of our kids at their new table. They have been loving it so far. Thank you so much for watching. What did you guys think of that tutorial?
I think they turned out great, and honestly these are a couple years old, and this is the main area where our kids color and play, and they hold up really well because the other benefit of doing it this way is you're drawing on top of the end grain, so it's actually a really tough surface to work off of.
Yeah, these have held up really well. Like you can't see any nicks or anything in them. The stain is still strong.
Yeah.
We still love this space, and I would totally recommend this way of doing an affordable tabletop, desktop, shelves, whatever it is you're building.
For a high impact look.
Yeah.
Looks really cool.
Definitely a good option.
So if you have any questions, make sure you put them in the comments below, and we hope you enjoyed this video.
If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. Let us know in the comments below. And as always, hit the bell so that you don't miss out on future DIY and renovation videos. Thanks for watching.